PA Football News. We're here today with Mike Pearson, the head coach of the Williamsport Millionaires. I've known you for 30-some years, and you're a well-traveled football guy. So you want to give the fans a little connection on how you got to this point and where it all began and your trip to get here?
Yeah, I'm born and raised Williamsport, Pennsylvania. Went to Williamsport High School where we are tonight. Graduated from South Williamsport, and didn't get very far. Played college football here in Williamsport at Lycoming. So it seemed like I was a hometown guy forever. And then my first coaching job was up in Towanda. And so that made me a Northern Tier guy, but I honestly was a little bit. Growing up in Williamsport, my dad lived in the Northern Tier and we lived in town here, so I had a lot of times up in the Northern Tier as a kid growing up, so I felt really comfortable up there. And spent the first 4 years of my career from 1991 to 1995 really growing up, to be honest. The people in Towanda kind of helped bring me up as a teacher. You go from being a kid in school, just wondering if you can get a job, to getting to help out, coaching sports, teaching, chaperoning dances, hosting, like anything that you could help out with, it was fantastic. So that was a great time in my life. And then from there, came home for just a little bit, and then my wife and I, we headed out west to California for about 5 years and loved living out there. It was really fun. It really changed my perspective, getting to see the country. And when I moved out to California, I was like, I loved coaching here in Pennsylvania. I thought, I'm not going to coach. And it just so turned out that one of our neighbors in this apartment complex we lived in, all young teachers, was a Pittsburgh guy who played football at Bucknell, and he was coaching at the high school out there. So they needed a filmer, and I was a filmer for like the first 5 weeks, and that was fun. And then they needed, help out a little bit, and I was right back in. It was like a mob movie, right back in.
We have a passion, you can't get away from it.
It's just like, so right back to coaching, and my wife was laughing at me. She was like, I knew you were going to coach. And I was like, yeah, but once we left home, it's like, I didn't know if I wanted to coach. But the kids in California, there was great football players out there, just Southern California. And we saw some amazing athletes and some amazing teams. It was really fun. And most of the guys I coached with in Southern California, they were from Oklahoma.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, and it's, our school district would recruit different areas of the country. They loved teachers from Pennsylvania, they loved teachers from Oklahoma. So yeah, me and my buddy from Pittsburgh, we were the 2 PA guys on an Oklahoma staff.
So it's a good mix then.
It was a great mix, and and those guys from Oklahoma are really funny. They're really full of beans, and so. But I learned a lot of football from them. And then right around 2000, after my oldest son, Angelo, was born, we had an opportunity to come home, and I got an opportunity to coach at Lycoming. And that was a big, big privilege and a big honor to be able to come home, because the coaches at Lycoming were just phenomenal teachers, phenomenal coaches. So I had a chance to come home and spent about 8 years at Lycoming coaching. And our head coach retired after an amazing 36-year career. And I noticed there was a day that I was home as an assistant, and some of Coach Girardi's guys from the 1970s came back to visit, and they were great guys. I grew up in that neighborhood, so I remembered them as players. And for a long time before Coach Girardi got there, Lycoming had struggled. And so when these guys came back, he lit up, his energy. And he had some fantastic teams that played for national championships and won so many conference titles and tons of NCAA victories.
He really put them on the map.
Yeah, and I said, hey coach, I said, I asked you a question in all seriousness, because we joke around a lot, the whole staff. I said, you light up different when those guys came in. I said, what's that all about? He says, well, Michael, he says, those guys came here when there was no reason to come here. They came here on faith. And he said, all the success that the older teams and you kids got, that was built on their backs. He goes, so yeah, when they come back, he goes, I do light up differently. He goes, because those guys, I was able to get them to come here when nobody wanted to come here. And they took a lot of pride in that. So that kind of hit me like a punch right in the chest. And we went out to practice that day. I think it was like a walk-through day, like on a Friday. And I remember thinking, man, like, how do you do that? How do you build something from scratch?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, really hard. You know, I've been spoiled, coached with a guy like Jack Young, the Zalonis brothers, you know. It's turnkey. Those guys tell you where to go and what to do and what to say. But if you had to do it yourself, Coach Girardi and all his assistants, could you do it? And man, that ached at me. That ached at me when you were retired. And I thought, man, someday I'd like to, you know, try it, see if it works, or at least fail. See if you could build something from scratch. And so spent a little bit of time up at Mansfield as an assistant after Coach retired. Spent some time back at South Williamsport, but really was trying to figure out, finding my way. You know, what do I want to do here? But that one question kept aching at me. And I got involved in sprint football at Mansfield. I was really thankful for that opportunity because Mansfield's a wonderful place. And sprint football, if you've ever been around it, it's an amazing league. And I love it. I could go on forever about it. But I ended up in Philadelphia as the first head coach at Chestnut Hill College, which was an all-girls school, all-women's school, I should say, about 10 years before that. And their president, she loved football, and her father was a midshipman from Navy, and she wanted a football team. And so we went down there, man, we started a football team from scratch. And some of my friends.
So you got to live what Coach Girardi had gone through. You got to live that yourself. Yeah,
and I tell you what, it was hard. I mean, the first year, like I left Williamsport right after the last game of the season, like in November, and I didn't even try to move our family down to Philly because we had to put together a team for the following fall. And I slept in my office. I don't know if the college knew. They gave me a room. God bless them. They were wonderful, but it was just so much work. I ended up not even going to my room. I would just lay down in my office and sleep and go to the gym and get a shower in the morning and get right back at it.
And what was the criteria? You're starting a team from scratch. What's the criteria? Like, what's the bar to say, here's the players we're looking for, here's the players we're looking for, and here's the spots we want to find them from?
You know, the time we spent at Mansfield was so invaluable because they had started up after Division II football went away.
Yeah, back in the early to mid 90s.
A guy named Steve McCluskey kept them alive, kept them relevant. But they had to fill a roster. And so what I realized from what I learned from the Mansfield people was we're probably not going to be able to get a ton of guys the first year that are great players. We're going to get two-way players at the college level. And we were really fortunate. Some wonderful kids came with us. A lot of Lehigh Valley kids, and some great Philly kids and South Jersey kids, and some international kids too. You know, from all over America, and even some kids from overseas came. And we were able to get a handful of really, really good football players the first year.
Like when you're recruiting for sprint football, the criteria is you have to be under a certain weight, correct? So that's quite a niche department of players. So like Division 1, 2, and 3 aren't really looking for these guys. So it kind of leaves them hanging out here for you to come pick them off the tree, kind of.
We had some really, really fortunate things happen to us. I was at Northampton Community College down in Lehigh Valley, and I was at a college day, and I wasn't meeting anybody. I mean, nobody was coming by. Hey, I want to play
crickets over on your table, huh?
It was an epic fail. And finally, about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I was like, I gotta take a walk. Like, this is frustrating. I went to the gym because, you know, I was a gym rat growing up. My dad was a basketball guy, and we were just always in the gym. And so I go down to the gym, and I got my gear on from Chestnut Hill, and the baseball players at Northampton said, "What's your deal, man?" And I told them. And they're like, "There's a kid at the other end of the gym. You need to meet him." And I said, "Well, I gotta go to the bathroom. I'll be right back." And they're like, "No, you're not going anywhere." They brought this kid out. He was a great player at IUP, but he ran into some struggles academically. His name's Kaneem Pankey. He's from eastern Pennsylvania. he came home. Northampton is the local community college, and he was hoping for another chance to play college football. Well, he was like Superman for us. He was a wonderful player, but he also had life experiences because he was older. So
And he could trickle that down to the younger players coming in that weren't life experienced.
he taught our kids so much, and he had a chance to play. And Kadeem still plays professionally today in Germany.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, he's a great guy, but you know, he taught guys what it meant to struggle and overcome, and just having Kadeem was like the Pied Piper because other guys came, and he knew a lot of kids, and a lot of kids were coaches. We looked up to him.
Yeah.
Because he was a magnificent player, and he played for IUP.
He was a great human being by the sound of it. So when you're a great human being, you attract lots of people want to be close to you. So hopefully some of that greatness rubs off. That's why I come down and talk to you today.
I'm just glad you came down. I mean, how humbling was it to get your call after 32, 33 years? I'm like, wow, like Lindsey Bennett still sounds the same on the phone.
And I was thinking, man, I hope he even remembers my name. And then he called me by name, and I was like,
yeah, and I was like, we were getting ready to go out for like a practice at Tawanda back in the 90s. So I was down at Chestnut Hill for about 6 years, and you know, we were really fortunate. Some really good things happened there, and but I had burned a lot of energy starting the program. I'll tell you what, and I was really thankful. So I was ready to take a break from head coaching. I knew that if I stayed at it, I needed to just come up for air. So I came home, and was really fortunate. My mom was in a position where she needed some help and wanted to help my brothers, help my mom. And so my mom moved in with us, and my wife and I bought a house right next to the field at Lycoming. My wife and I are both Lycoming grads. So
it was like coming back home.
Yeah, we're like 500 feet from the practice field that we grew up on. So I'm geeking hard. I'm into it. And then Coach Clark at Lycoming gave me an opportunity just to come help out a little bit. And
Just put your toe in the water.
I was really thankful. Like, it was fun. It was fun just to be a position coach. It was fun not to have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders for the program. But I also felt for Michael because he's a great coach. When you're sitting in that head seat, not everybody understands the weight you carry. So I was really happy to work with him and just do a little bit to get his back.
Take a little bit of weight, take a little bit off his plate.
And we went through COVID together, and then we came out of COVID together, and then the Williamsport job opened, and I wasn't thinking about it at all, and I really consider myself more comfortable as a college coach than a high school coach. And my son came home, my younger son was a captain here at Williamsport, played for Coach Cruz, had a wonderful experience. We enjoyed that time. I didn't know Coach was going to retire. I was paying attention to everything we were doing at Lycoming, and kind of oblivious, to be honest with you. And Coach retired at the end of a great season in 21, and his son went on to become a great player at Bloomsburg. So it was a time to change here, and some people spoke to me a little bit. I thought, well, if I can help you guys a little bit, I'd be happy to help a little bit. So came home the spring of 22, and here we are the fall of 24, and we're getting ready to play for a district championship on Friday night. So we're really excited about that.
Oh yeah.
We're really thankful.
So this past week you guys played Hazleton, and that was a grinder of a game.
Yes. So we were really fortunate early in the season, which seems like a lifetime ago. We went out to Hazleton, and we have a ton of respect for the Hazleton program and Coach Bookman. Just, if you get to know him, one of the best guys in the state, really class guy. And the Hazleton kids are tough, and we just love playing football against them. We're really fortunate to get a victory out there. And Coach Bookman and I were talking after the game. He goes, "This was such a tough game and a fun game." He goes, "I can't wait to do it again." And he looked me in the eyes, and I wasn't even thinking about that. At that point, I was like, man, we're just thankful.
We're on the next week. We got a lot of slips between a couple of
And he looked at me, and I was like, oh man, I'm like, we're going to play these guys again. This is going to be a dog fight. So we would talk to each other, not every week, but every other week, and root for each other. And I'm like, hey man, we could meet again.
It's all getting lined up here.
And then to wrap the season up, we played Wilkes-Barre, and we play this week. And kind of a wild game, and we love the coach at Wilkes-Barre, Coach Cinti. He's a LICO guy, so and there's some great guys there that we've known forever. Coach Eddie Michaels, who's Wyoming Valley West head coach, just classic guys. And we were fortunate to get a crazy win against Wilkes-Barre. And when the game was over, the guy from the Sun Gazette was like, "You're gonna play Wilkes-Barre next week," and I'm like, "Man, how do you know that? Like, the game's over like 3 minutes. I don't even know who won or lost other games." And like, I just can't believe like this was a wild night. Well, it wasn't Wilkes-Barre, it was Hazleton. So here we go, we're going to play Hazleton again. And, you know, by Saturday morning, Coach Bookman and I were talking, and like, here we go. And you know, we were fortunate enough, nobody would have thought that was going to happen. We ended up hosting last week, so we were really happy to have a playoff game at home. And our kids were great, and we had a great week of practice. And, man, it was a hard-fought game Friday night with Hazleton. I mean, it was 7-6 with under 2 minutes to go. We were holding on to a 1-point lead, and I got my fitness watch, and every once in a while I peek at my heart rate. My heart rate was like, it was jumping, man. And we were fortunate enough to get out of there with a win. Really fortunate. I don't think the fans realize, the Hazleton fans or the Williamsport fans, how fortunate anyone was to win that game, because it was such a hard-fought game and two really, really classy teams. And so, you know, line up again, and we get a chance to play for a championship. And again, play Wilkes-Barre, who we were really fortunate enough to get a win against, but man, they're going to be tough. It's a great program, but we got great kids too. I always tell our kids, give yourself credit too. We're always really polite and honest about it, but these are great kids here at Williamsport, so I'm really excited for them.
Now, you talked about your history, like at Towanda. Like, how does coaching at a 6A school compare to like little AA Towanda? Like, how many kids do you guys graduate here?
Well, for our school as a whole, we graduate somewhere over 300 in the graduating class. And that sounds like a lot, but my brothers graduated here in the 70s when we were graduating above 700 kids, sometimes up to close to 1,000 kids.
And some of the 6A schools graduate in the thousands.
Yeah.
So I mean, considering, and you're one of the only 6A teams in District 4, so you guys are kind of an anomaly of a team, because you're stuck out here in the corner and you got to travel a long way to find another 6A team.
You do, and we play some schools that aren't 6A. I mean, we play some nasty, smaller school. I say smaller, but it's relatively smaller. I mean, we played Shamokin this year. What a wonderful football team that is.
They're a lot of fun to watch, that's for
we
sure.
played Jersey Shore. I mean, when we're not playing Jersey Shore, we're rooting for Jersey Shore. I mean, Shamokin and Jersey Shore, they make it tough.
Mm-hmm.
We played Selinsgrove, and you know, this time a year ago, Selinsgrove was on a magical run.
Mm-hmm.
They're tough. We went out to Hollidaysburg a couple weeks ago, and I'll be honest with you, I mean, there's a lot of places I love and I love to travel to. Western PA for me, that's always a learning experience. Like, I don't know Western PA like I know Eastern PA. And I was really fortunate to get to coach in the Big 33's East-West game last year, and I thought I'd be on the Philly side, so I was all excited. And I found out I was on the Pittsburgh side, and I was like, oh, that's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
So to go to Hollidaysburg, that was awesome. So we've had a tough schedule playing teams from, you know, the 6A level, 5A level, 4A level, some tough teams.
Yeah.
And but it's really kind of helped us.
Yeah. Like, do you guys have cuts?
No, we don't cut. To be honest with you, I mean, we're fortunate. We have a good number of kids that play football here, but having that small school background from Towanda, from South Williamsport, I think it's harder for those coaches because you don't have a lot of guys. You get a coach like Coach Eisworth or Coach Young back in the day, or the Salonis brothers.
Yeah, or Tyler
Go on
Seacrest.
forever, yeah.
I was talking to him and he said he had 35 guys at the beginning of the season. Well, you got about 9 or 10 real football players, and you sprinkle the other guys in, and then you get some injuries to some of your key players. I mean, you're really, like, you can ask Canton this year, like they were singing the blues there for 4 or 5 weeks during the season.
100%. And think about some of the Magic kids that played in Canton over the last 3 years, 4 years.
Yeah, unbelievable runs they've had.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
great football players.
I was-
But they graduate, and it's harder to fill back in at a Canton or a South Williamsport or a Wyalusing or a Sayre.
Yep.
So those guys, I think you could take those guys and plug them in at Williamsport, and they would flourish with the amount of kids.
Yeah.
But every place has its challenges, and every place has its advantages and disadvantages. But I think the small school guys are really, really awesome because they get a lot done with very little.
Yeah.
You know, they get some great guys, wonderful, but they get some kids that are just really good kids to believe in themselves and be good football players. That's why I think they have the advantage.
And it's fun to, like you said about that, watching these kids mature. Like Twanda is a great story this year. Like when they started out the year, when they played Hughesville, even though they didn't have Riley Vanderpool, they struggled. Like their secondary was like Swiss cheese. They played Bloomsburg last week. Man, they look like a good, solid, all-around team, and it's going to be fun to see how they do this week against Warrior Run.
I remember watching Riley play last year. I came up to watch Twanda play Tunkhannock on a Thursday night, and I thought, that Riley, he's a somebody, man. And then just watching him blossom this year and watching their team blossom. The night I came up to visit, I think Coach Wecker was coaching the junior high this time last year.
Yeah, yep.
And they had just finished an undefeated run, and I was talking to him, and you know, he's great. He's like, it's no big. I'm like, you're undefeated, and that's all trickling up.
Yeah,
like that's going to be a really good thing for Twanda.
It's that culture, the winning culture. Like once you're used to winning, losing sucks that much more.
So I'm excited to see them having a really good run this year. And, you know, they're playing this week too. I mean, the field just thinned out last week.
Yep.
Some good teams got sent home, and some good teams are advancing. But no, the Black Knights are playing on. That makes me feel good.
Yeah.
And,
yep.
Some of those teams they played, like Hughesville had a great season.
Yeah.
And when watching those coaches, they're friends of ours, watching them build and build and build. And the Bloomsburg people the same way. We had a really fun day with Bloomsburg this summer down at Mount Carmel. And we were using Old Shamokin Lords High School for like a get-together jamboree, and it was awesome. Those guys are great guys.
Yeah.
Mount Carmel guys are great guys. We really enjoy working with them in the off season. Southern too.
Yeah.
You know, we see them at Lycoming a lot. There's a lot of programs that are really good to us, and we like the summertime because we like working with everybody in District 4.
Yeah. Like you mentioned Bloomsburg, like when I watched them last week, they got some really, really talented athletes on that field. And it's going to be fun to see them going forward in the next year and the year after. Like they got some young, great talent.
When we did 7-on-7 and big man stuff with them this summer, they're really well coached in Bloomsburg. And you can see like there's young kids coming in that program. They're going to be nasty down the road. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So you're here at Williamsport, a 6A school up where there isn't 6A schools, and like you play a lot of the top tier 4, 5, 8 teams in the area. And how do you like prepare for the small? You guys are a big school, obviously. So how does it like trickle down to the kids when you prepare for smaller, like Shamokin, for instance? How does the preparation, does it differ from preparing for Shamokin as opposed to like Hazleton?
I think it really comes down to the style that they play, the athletes that they have, and for us, usually at the 6A level, it doesn't matter if you play somebody from 5A or 4A. What are their linemen like?
Yeah.
So we see some teams like just magnificent linemen, but we're getting ready for Shamokin. Like I've been watching that team coming on since they were in junior high.
Yeah.
And their coaches are fantastic. And I kept telling everybody like the first couple weeks of the season, I'm like, they have a sophomore quarterback named Logan Steele. And a lot of people know his name. And if you don't know his name, you should already know his name.
And if you don't, you're gonna know it soon.
I'm like, you're gonna know it real quick. But it's not just Logan. I mean, there's a great team around him. And
like you said about a line, they got a hell of a line. Man.
We had a wonderful game down there with them. And talk about a big time high school atmosphere. I mean, it's just people of Shamokin, they've been working really hard for a long time to have one of these magic seasons. And it was just an awesome football night down there. And like, I'm getting to the age now where it's like, yeah, you want to win really bad, but you got to pause and kind of respect the work that other people are putting in. I'm really, really respectful of the work that Shamokin has put in. I mean, they're just rolling undefeated. But they're really fun to watch. They're really classy kids, and they play hard.
And for the fans watching, if you haven't been, there's two places I'd recommend: Shamokin and Mount Carmel. Go to the Silver Bowl and go to Shamokin. Catch a football game some fall. You'll never regret it. You'll get education, won't they?
Yeah, you get something good to eat too. Like, you can get great food in Mount Carmel. You can go to Shamokin and stop at the Coney Island, and you'll never regret that.
And you'll even learn some new words when you're down there.
Yeah, you will. And you know, like a lot of years when you get knocked out of the playoffs as a young coach, you pick right up the next week, and your buddies, you jump in a van, you jump in a truck, and you go watch a game. I can't remember all the games you went to Mount Carmel to see, all the games you went to Shamokin as playoff sites to see. They're just awesome places.
This time of year in Pennsylvania is just a great, if you're a high school football fan, this is the pinnacle of life.
When I was in California, my buddy Mikey Ruggiero, who grew up in Pittsburgh, a guy from Bucknell, we would always be fighting with people about Pennsylvania football, and Texas football is better, Florida football is better, and we would always go toe-to-toe fighting with everybody. And then we'd fight amongst ourselves, because he grew up in Pittsburgh, Western PA, and I was Eastern PA, and we would just, and our wives would be like, you two need to knock it off. We're like, no. 2 a.m, sitting at the kitchen table just fighting about stuff.
About 10 beers in, man, it's preheated.
No good answer. Like, you can fight forever. There's great guys on the whole part of the state, but I understand the Steelers are from Pittsburgh. You don't have to keep reminding me that. Like, I get it.
All your experiences in football, all the great relationships you have made, all the connections, man, it has to be quite a life that you've lived. There are a lot of people that love football and have a passion for it, probably wish they could make a living like you have in football.
Yeah, I mean, when you stop and think about it, you're usually just working on what's important right now in front of you. And most guys don't stop and reflect enough. But, my wife and I, we've been all over the country. We've met so many cool people. We could go on and on, but you don't want to sound like a name dropper, but you've met a lot of really cool people. People that you thought you would never meet growing up here in Williamsport. I mean, we're sitting in the classroom. This was a classroom for me when I was a kid. I never thought we'd have those kind of adventures. And, we have 3 kids. Our youngest son, Bo, he's in England. He's serving in the Air Force. He was a captain here in Williamsport. And our oldest son, Angelo, he plays sprint football himself, and they're both veterans. They both have been deployed, but our son Angelo left active duty, and now he's a midshipman at Navy playing sprint football and studying. And our daughter Mia, she's a junior here at Williamsport. She's got a powder puff game in 2 nights, so she couldn't get her brother's number, so she got 1 number less. He's 25, she's 24. So, just the fact that we have one playing football right now, and being part of the sprint team at Navy, we're just really, really thankful, because we do have a kid playing college football right now. And, but, the fact that the boys are safe and they've served with some really good people all over the world on their deployments, but just really thankful. We get to go to Annapolis some. We'll get to see a game this week out in New Jersey on Saturday night. Our son has a game, so
that'll be awesome.
Yeah, we don't always get to see him play. Like last Friday night, we're battling with Hazleton, and I'm asking my friends, I'm like, does anybody know the score of the Navy sprint game? They were playing University of Pennsylvania. And they're like, they're doing okay. And then after the game right away, you grab the phone and you realize, they were fortunate they got a big win against Pennsylvania, and they'll get a chance to go to their championship.
Wow, that's awesome. You're both playing for championships.
Yeah, we both played for a berth in the championship last Friday night. So now we're right back at it. They have a couple of weeks, and then they're going to have a rematch with Army. And Coach Dawsey from Towanda is coaching sprint football at Army.
Oh, he is?
He is, 100%, yeah. And so I just think that's a wonderful thing for Coach Craig to be doing. Now he has a chance to go do something magical after all his years, serving in Towanda.
Absolutely.
And it's got to be a really great fall for him to be up in West Point.
Oh,
we're a weird family. Like, we're a Navy family, but we don't hate Army.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of friends in Army, too.
Yeah.
But I'm really happy that Coach Dossie's up there.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's a great story.
Yep. So, yeah, we're just thankful for all the places we've been and the people we've met. A lot of really, really good people.
And this video is a great thing because there's so many people around the whole northern tier and District 4 that just see you on the sideline or pass you somewhere and don't know your backstory, have no idea really what makes you tick, And now the people that see this video get to understand where you have come from and what you've done in the past and what your expectations are.
I mean, I like serving as a head coach, but I really like the behind the scenes work. I like watching film. Like I've enjoyed being an assistant as much as I've enjoyed being a head coach. But just to be around the kids and work at football, and it's really fun when they get it. When you can see their confidence go up. That means everything.
And the football part is just a small piece because you've been around kids your whole adult life, and you've been making young men better young men as they leave your programs. And that speaks volumes because I know you, and you're a great human being. So when you impact a young life, that's what the society needs.
Yeah, we're trying. I mean, I learned a really, really good lesson out in California, and I can't say that we're friends. And of course, this is coming up on 30 years ago, but I got to know Coach John Wooden a little bit out in California, and just by attending a bunch of lectures he was given in small colleges and UCLA, and just would shut up and listen to him for a 3-hour lecture. And he said the best part of his career, and all the national championships he won in basketball and things, he said the biggest thing that helped him was when he was human, when he would make mistakes and his players would call him out on mistakes. And he didn't like it, and he'd go home and sleep on it, and he'd come back the next day or a couple days later and admit the mistakes he made with his players and be human. And I just remember listening to Coach talk about that, thinking, well, that guy pretty much walked on water. And if he made mistakes as a human being, we're all making mistakes.
Yeah.
Just try not to be stubborn and try not to be vain. When you make mistakes, just try to be human with your kids and work through them, but also give them grace when they're making mistakes too.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing I see is they're not done growing up yet. And sometimes it's hard to realize that in the moment. These are kids that are just trying to grow up.
Absolutely.
And no, kids haven't changed, but I think it's a hard world for kids to grow up.
With social media and all this stuff, instant gratification, like it makes it so much more tough to grow up today than it did back 30 years ago.
But I know here at Williamsport, it's probably not a lot different than a lot of other places. You got kids that are working really hard to help their families. You got kids that people don't know all the hard work they put in just to get by on a daily basis.
Yep.
And then for the most part, they're really kind. Like they do the right thing, but it's really important for them to have adults around them that are feeding them the right information, that are being real honest with them and making them be responsible. That's hard too. It's easy not to do that.
That, and you have expectations that they have to meet, which I think is a great thing, because if nobody had expectations, like who would care what people thought, you know what I mean? Like when the kids, I'm sure when the kids, you're the coach of the kids, like it matters what you think of them. So when they're down at the grocery store, they help an old lady to the car or something, that's an extension of you because you're teaching them that you expect them to be great human beings.
I've learned more from that by watching kids do things when they don't know anybody's watching, and seeing some of the things that kids do right. It's not being put on social media. It's not being blown. Kids do some amazing things when it doesn't matter who gets the credit.
Yeah.
And sometimes when they don't realize you're watching them do really good things, that really makes you feel good. Like that kid gets it, or that kid's grown up a lot, or that kid's a good person, or Like kids just really humble, and yet in the same breath, they can be really tough kids on the field.
Yeah.
And that's what I really like about the kids here and the kids we play against. I mean, they're tough, but you know what? They're somebody's kids too.
Yep.
And I really like watching these kids because coming home from being away recruiting, I kind of like all the schools because being in and out of all the schools and recruiting.
Yeah, you make friendships and relationships with all these people and all these schools. I mean, how can you not love a lot of them, you know?
Like, dude, I would do anything to have a Berwick kid on my roster, or a Hazleton kid, or a Wilkes-Barre kid, you know, or a Hollidaysburg kid, or a Canton kid.
Yep.
Like, so when you see kids from those towns, you know, like, what the values of those towns are. You know, the High Valley kids, I love their toughness.
Yep.
Getting a chance to coach the Pittsburgh kids this past spring, man, that was awesome.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know what a Pittsburgh Central Catholic kid was like. You know, everybody, like, not everybody's Dan Marino.
Yeah.
Man, those dudes are tough. They're really tough. And the Jersey Shore kids and the Pittsburgh Central Catholic kids made up a big part of our line in the East-West game. And the first day was pretty rocky because those guys were getting after each other.
Yeah.
And but after that, like, they all settled in. So when you look at your line, you're like, he's Jersey Shore, he's Pittsburgh Central Catholic.
Yeah.
Like, wow, that's some tough kids right there.
Yeah. Yep.
Country kids and city kids.
And after they played against each other and hit each other a couple times, they have a mutual respect to say, you're in the club. You know what I mean?
So that was a really fun experience to see, because you know that Pittsburgh background, that aura's got a mystique to it.
Oh yeah, it does.
And so we played a lot of those Pittsburgh schools in the NCAA playoffs when I was a kid. Man, there was never any like love there. They were just nasty, tough football games. But to get a chance to coach those kids, it was different.
Oh yeah.
So I really enjoyed that. But yeah, I'm just thankful for the kids we've gotten to know, and just to watch them grow. And sometimes growing up's hard. You see people make mistakes. You see people pick themselves up and move on, and you coach long enough too, you see some really hard stories too.
Yeah.
It's really hard, but every town has that. It's just part of life, man.
Yep. And you've coached thousands of kids, and you made an impact on thousands of kids. And it's just an amazing thing that all you coaches do in the whole country. Pennsylvania, every state, it's just an amazing thing that people give their time and they have a passion for football, but football is just a small portion of what goes into making better human beings.
Yeah, it is, and I'll be honest with you, in all those years of coaching, I think I've learned more from the kids than they've learned from me. Because you learn something from this kid, and that kid does something special, or this kid overcame a challenge, and then you learn from that, and you can give that information to another kid.
Yep.
You know, I was really fortunate, like Homie, to coach a lot of really, really good wide receivers. And some of them would do things different, but if this kid had a really good setup or a move or a way of doing something, then he would teach it to you. Then a couple years later, you'd teach it to another kid. And he did something special, so just try to take what all the kids teach you, kind of keep it stored and help other kids with it.
Yep. And a lot of these kids will go on to coach and pass it, and that stuff will trickle down through generations of different kids. And it's just a great thing.
They just got to be themselves. Like, you can't, in this business, you can't fake it. You can't read 8 books about Nick Saban and be like, I'm going to be Nick Saban.
Or fall asleep on a Nick Saban book and hope it's going to...
Yeah, like Nick Saban's like a kid from West Virginia with a really tough family that made him who he is. Like, you just got to be you. But those stories are great. You can learn from them. But in the end, these coaches got to be yourself.
Exactly. You got to be yourself.
And listen to the people around you that can help you.
Yep.
You know, and try not to say anything to these kids that you'd have to apologize to them for 15 years when they're grown up. Like, you could be tough on them, but don't make it personal. That's why I'm really thankful. That was the like homing way. Was be really tough on people, but always pick them back up. And I think that came from here, believe it or not, because Coach Fargo from Williamsport in the 50s, he was that way. He was a master psychologist. And he was one of Coach Girardi's coaches, and Coach had a great way himself. So I think some of it goes a big circle.
Yeah.
So now I just try to take those lessons that you learn from those guys and bring it back home. And And these kids you're right, they'll go on to teach, they'll go on to coach, they'll go on to raise families, and hopefully you've done some good things that can help them down the line. A lot of those kids have good families too that they're coming from, so.
Yep. And like we talked about before the cameras roll, like Coach Strzelecki from Troy, like he made an amazing impact on everybody that knew that guy. And I feel that you're that guy in today's world.
Oh man, I mean, I'm just a human being. Coach Strez, that guy he was cutting edge. He was a legend.
He was cutting edge, but I'm sure if we could go back to 1984 and talk to him, it'd be just like sitting here talking to you.
I would have been happy to be a grunt on Coach Strez's staff and get him a cup of coffee. But yeah, when I was in Philly and ran into people that knew him growing up, that made like the hairs on my neck go up.
Yeah.
Like, wow, like they know that guy, but I know what he means in Troy and the whole northern tier and up and down Myra. Like he had a great impact.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of guys here in Williamsport, like Coach Ridson on this, like he could talk to you for hours about his time with Coach Strez and Troy and what an impact it made on him.
Yep. And at the end of the day, as a football coach, that's what you want your legacy to be, is that you made an impact on all these different human beings. And 30 years later, they're still talking about that guy.
I'll tell you what, 30 years, we're sitting here talking tonight, 30 years goes.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Yep.
And, I heard you're going to be talking to my boy Coach Young.
Yep. This Thursday we're going to try to set it up and talk to Jackie Young and see where he's a legend in his own way, just like you are, just like Coach Quigg is.
There's a lot of guys that are legends. I got to be honest, I'm not a legend, but you get a guy
in
like
your mind you're not, but like anybody
that
that knows you, man, Coach Pearson, Coach Pearson, Coach Pearson. It's like when I talked to him to set up this interview, he goes, "You want to interview me? What for?" I said, "Because you're a legend." He kind of like Coach Quigg.
Coach Quiggs was the best when you interviewed him. And you said something about him being like, They're like, that's absolutely a Coach Quigg thing. and that was my favorite part of your whole interview, which was a wonderful interview on your part.
Thank you.
I was just
appreciate
like,
that.
Yeah, Coach Quigg is Coach Quigg, man. He's human of a person you can be.
Yep. Well, we appreciate your time at PA Football News. Thank you so much for sitting down with us and getting a little insight and showing the fans what Coach Pearson is. And
yeah, I mean, Lindsay, thank you for taking the time to drive down here on a Monday night after a day at work, and then you got to drive back up to the northern tier. And just good luck to all the teams out there this week, and all the seniors, fighting for one more game or two more games. Like, it means the world.
it does, and that's like we were talking about before the camera rolled about your last play ever. Like, how do you want it to be? For some of you guys watching this, it's going to be your last football game you'll ever suit up in your whole life.
Yeah. When we had our game here the other night, two teams just fighting to, survive and advance, but knowing that only one team's going to go on. And I mean, there's some kids on that Hazelton team that we absolutely love competing with, and to see them have to take it off after that game, take your jersey off, man, that rips your heart out.
Absolutely.
Rips your heart out. This game was a wonderful game. This game's a brutal game. So, to all of our District 4 friends and other places too, man, I hope you have a great week, and have a great week to get ready to survive and advance, right?
Absolutely. That's what it's all about. You're in crunch time now. It's play and go on, or lose and go home.
Thank you, Coach. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you for your time and for PA football. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Good night.